Good morning, fellow teachers, and welcome to my presentation, Improving Student Learning, Assessment, Evaluation, and Reporting for the ELA Classroom. Let's start with the basics by reviewing definitions and examples of the different types of assessment. Assessment for learning is comprised of two components, the first being diagnostic and the second formative. Regarding the latter, it consists of the continual gathering and interpreting of assessment information during learning for use by learners and their teachers to help decide where the learners are in their learning, where they need to go, and how to best get there. So to be clear, assessment for learning is not used to give a mark, but rather to assess students' state of learning. That is, to discover where they are going in their learning and where they currently are in their learning. Teachers are transformed into facilitators of learning and are seen as lead learners who model the skills to be acquired. Some good teaching strategies to achieve this are exit cards, learning logs, the 3-2-1 summarizer, 4 corners, and fist of 5. Assessment as learning is defined as the continual process of fostering students' capacity over time to be their own best assessors. During this process, teachers need to begin by presenting and modeling external, structured opportunities for students to assess themselves. We must remember that this is important as teachers to first teach the students the necessary information required to complete a task, and then model what is to be expected of them. The students should then be given the opportunity to practice the new skills, followed promptly with the teacher providing descriptive feedback to allow them to assess where they are in their learning and to help them identify how to improve. This gradual release of responsibility is what assessment as learning, a key component in today's classroom, and enables the self-assessment process to be successful. Although both assessment for learning and assessment as learning improve student success, one is more predominantly used by teachers, while the other is used by students. All in all, it is important to build a collaborative learning environment where students are able to eventually become responsible for their own learning and self-assessment skills. Assessment of learning is the use of assessment information to make judgments about learning, to assign a grade, to report on the student's learning progress. These assessments are summative and are ultimately what become public and can have the most effect on students' futures. It is important to vary the types of evaluation being done during assessment of learning. Best practices include triangulating assessment sources to ensure that the learning goals are being met and you have enough information to report on the learning progress of each student. 3 categories you can use are products, conversations, and observations. As a young child, you must first learn how to crawl before you can walk. This principle can be applied to how a child learns almost anything in the school system. A teacher must identify the learning goal and then break down the steps to get there. Thus, if the primary goal of assessment and evaluation is to improve student learning, we must be able to identify the learning objectives and criteria to achieve success. By including collaborative learning partnerships in the assessment framework, instruction and assessment are done consecutively and ensures that student learning remains an interactive process. Each stage has relevant questions to keep in mind to make planning and assessment seamless. Learning goals. What will I be able to do by the end of the lesson or unit? Success criteria. What will my best work look like? What do I need to do to be successful? Descriptive feedback. What is done well? What part needs improvement, and what steps will I take to improve my work? Peer and self-assessment. How does my work compare to the criteria and the exemplar? How will I use the feedback from my peers to improve my work? And lastly, individual learning goals. what do I need to do next? It is important to share learning goals multiple times and in a number of ways. For example, always identify learning goals at the start of a lesson and have them posted visibly in the classroom. Students should also get into the habit of writing the learning goals in their notebooks so that they can refer to them frequently during instruction. Success criteria should always be described in student-friendly language to ensure that all learners have the same opportunity to achieve success. Modeling examples of student work from previous years helps students to learn how to analyze and critique based on particular assessment criteria. The question where plays an important role in creating a successful assessment framework. First, teachers must establish what the learning goals of the students are by identifying where the students are going in their learning so that they are able to have a clearer picture of where the student currently is in their learning. This helps to establish what needs to be done in order to get them where they want to be. Tying this type of assessment framework with the concept of backwards design ensures that teaching is more student-centered and ultimately creates students who take more responsibility of their own learning. Backwards design allows teachers to plan with the end in mind so that students are always clear on what the steps are to achieve success. The principles of backward design require you to think about the type of assessments you will be using in your planning by first asking how you will measure student success. This is usually achieved by aligning assessment directly to the skills and knowledge that you are aiming to have your students acquire via the learning objective. During the process of planning a lesson using the design down method, it is important to always remember to pull out the refined expectation. The smaller it is, the simpler it is. This pyramid shows where assessment stands in relation to the teaching and lesson planning processes. As you can see, a teacher should always start with assessment and end with assessment, as it is a continual and cyclical process. Your expectations come from the ministry. You teach the specific expectations, but not the overview when looking at the curriculum document. And it is the goal at the end of the course, not the end of the lesson plan. For example, you are expected to pull specific information from the curriculum expectations to put into your statement, "Today students will," as their learning goal. The assessment is of the expectation segment during the application. In other words, you need to know where you are going to be able to get there. Assessment is continual and is usually not familiar to you. Evaluation is when you are marking a student. So, up until now, we have been covering the reasons why we assess and how we assess. But to end this presentation, I would like to identify some activities and strategies that you can use in your own ELA classroom. The book club is a great example of how assessment for, as, and of learning can be present using just one strategy. As you can see here, this teaching strategy also aligns with all 4 of the achievement chart sections of the curriculum document, which is another important element to consider when planning your lessons. The more opportunities that you have to double dip, the better, as it will save you time but still provide you with the data you need to make both summative and formative assessments. Other English teaching activities that you could use include the following: hot seat, mini lessons, writer's workshop, 4 corners, literacy circles, post-it questioning, jigsaw, and tableau. Thank you for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed my presentation. Please feel free to click any of the links on this slide to find out more information about this topic.